DreAllDay.com.
It's no better than this. You are tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there. Even when the success you expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all of this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. This is the go-getter energy that moves you to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. We put all this together into one package. What you get is the mindset, the method, the philosophy, the book, the show, known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to compete and win mentally over physically. This is your understanding and from the saying that Napoleon Bonaparte is credited with saying that the mental is to the physical as 3 is to 1. Now, I give you a disclaimer before we even get into this episode that doesn't mean that your abilities don't matter. It doesn't mean you shouldn't work on your game, your physical game, your resource game, your skill game, your performance game. All of those things matter. But the mental game is 3 times more important than your physical resources. So as good as you are when it comes to your skill level and your ability to deliver and whatever you do tangibly, your mental skills should be 3 times stronger than that. So if they're not, then just keep listening to the show every day. I'll help you out. And make sure you go back into the archives because you over 1,000 episodes behind of stuff that has already been discussed. And you're going to need to listen to these over and over again, not just one time. So this show and the whole Work on Your Game philosophy, if you didn't know already, is all about the mental game. Now, while physical game matters a lot, as I said, the mental game matters a whole lot more. So today we're talking about how you can compete in life. And this is and when I say compete, this could be against other people. This could be your group against another group. This could be you competing against a situation that may be challenging you. It could be you competing against some internal challenges that you have. The situation may be challenging you from the outside, but it could be some stuff that's going on in your own mind that is getting in your way. You need to be able to compete against that, and you need to be able to defeat it. And you need to actually defeat it on a consistent basis so you can keep progressing and moving forward. So this is all about utilizing your mental game tools to compete and win in life, even if or when you don't have the same tangible resources as whatever it is you're going up against. There is a way to do this, and good news for you is I'm here to explain to you exactly how it's done. So make sure you're taking notes on this. Again, the topic today is we're going to point number 1, how to compete and win mentally over physically in life. Number 1, never allow an opponent or a situation, and the situation could be your opponent, a person could be the opponent, never let the situation or your opposition know that it has you on the ropes, that it has you depressed, anxious, worrying, fearful, down, any of those negative energies. Never allow the situations to know that it has you with your back to the wall. John Lucas some of you may know who he is. He's famous in the basketball world. These days, I believe he may be an assistant coach, but he's been an assistant coach. He's been a head coach in the NBA. He's been a skills trainer. He's a guy that a lot of NBA players have sought out to help those players out, help them get their minds right, help them get their games right. John Lucas was a pretty good player in the NBA. He actually ran into some substance abuse issues, and it kind of derailed his career in a way, but he got himself cleaned back up and got himself into the coaching ranks and has become a person that a lot of players look to when they need some help for themselves. He had a couple of sons who, one of them had a solid career in the NBA, another one a more brief career. I believe he played more overseas. But I'm telling you about John Lucas to tell you this quick story that I heard. One day he was training a player who was trying to make a comeback to the league. So this player hadn't been in the league for a while, but he was trying to make his comeback. He was John Lucas was based in Houston. So this player was down in Houston at John Lucas's gym working out with him. And of course, if you're a trainer putting a player through a workout, an athlete through a workout, you want to kick their ass, right? You want to have that workout be harder than what they're used to so that athlete realizes that they need to work harder, that they need to get better, so that hopefully the workouts that they're going through in the off season are tougher than the games they're going to go through during the season, so that the games will actually be easier than the trainings. So this player was getting his butt kicked by this workout by John Lucas, and the player at one point, he doubles over. And any of you who watch basketball, not double over, but he put his hands on his shorts. He's kind of tugging on his shorts and trying to catch his breath, right? Like any athlete may do when they're starting to get a little bit short of breath and trying to get their energy back. And John Lucas yelled at the player. He said, "Don't do that. Don't bend over and tug at your shorts. Stand up straight." Even if you're tired, stand up straight. And John Lucas said to the player, the reason why he was telling him that was, never let the workout know that it's kicking your butt. Now, the workout is not a person. I mean, the workout can't see this particular player. I mean, there's no human being that represents, quote, the workout, close quote. So why was John Lucas telling him to not let the workout know that it was kicking his butt, this NBA player's butt? Is because this is a mental thing. The workout really was what was going on in the player's mind. It wasn't what was going on in the gym, or if there were any cameras filming, or John Lucas himself, the trainer, or any spectators who was watching the workout. It wasn't about them. It was the player knowing in his own mind what John Lucas was implanting in him, that even when things are challenging, even when you are a little bit short of breath, even when you're feeling a little bit fatigued, don't let yourself know that you're feeling it. Don't let yourself know that you're tired. Don't let yourself know that you need a blow, that you need some oxygen. Don't let yourself know that you need a drink of water. Don't let yourself know that you're not in as good a shape that you could be in. Never letting the situation know that it has you on the ropes. And if that situation or that opposition happens to be a person, well, you can see them looking at you. But the situation, the opposition often in life for most of us, 95% of the time, situation is not the person that you're going against. Situation is not the enemy team or the enemy army if you're in battle, or the company that's trying to take you out of business. The situation is not really them. They just are representation of the situation. The real situation is what's going on in your own mind. There's a story of, it's in the 33 Strategies of War, written by Robert Greene. It's one of my top 5 favorite books. And I believe it's the second chapter of the book, might be the first chapter. But the chapter is all about declaring war on your enemy, figuring out who your enemy is, knowing who your target is, knowing what you're going after, so that you stay with your mental energy. Your spirit is strong when you know exactly who your opponent is. In life, all of us as human beings, our brains turn to mush, we become lethargic, and our energy goes down when we don't know what we're going after, when we don't have a target, when we seem to be moving about aimlessly, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know where we're going, we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. But as soon as we have a target, as soon as we have something to aim at, as soon as we have an enemy to defeat, and an enemy doesn't have to be a person, doesn't have to be somebody that's trying to stop us. An enemy could be, I'm tired of being out of shape and I want to get in shape. So the enemy is being out of shape. As soon as we have something to focus on and something to go after, all of a sudden our energy comes up, our spirits rise, our focus gets sharper. We are able to wake up earlier in the morning. We're able to stay up later at night. Why? It's because we have something to focus on, because we have a target. Human beings, we need targets. We need something to go after. And the target, again, if you happen to be that type of person, it could be a person, it could be an individual, somebody that you want to shut down or defeat or overcome, or it could just be a situation, something that you created in your own mind. But if you don't have anything to go after, you'll fall apart. And the story that Robert Greene told, I forget which army this was he was talking about, so I won't name it, but there was an army that found themselves badly outnumbered. They were far away from home, and it seemed that they were surrounded by an enemy army that was a lot bigger than them, had a lot more resources than them, and it just seemed like this wandering army was basically, they were going to die. It seemed that they were going to be sentenced to death by this surrounding army that was going to attack them at any moment, and it was pretty much going to be over for them. And one of the soldiers in this army, he was more of a philosopher than a soldier, but he had been coming along with the army. He looked around and he saw a bunch of the soldiers were in despair. They were drinking. They were just laying around like it's pretty much over for us. Everyone had just pretty much mentally just given up. I mean, they were still alive at that point, but they had pretty much given up. And what this soldier finally did, he roused everybody together. Well, first he went to the leaders of the army and he told them, and then they liked what he said so much that they told him to tell everybody. And he said, look, the opponent that we're going against right now is not the opposing army. The opponent we're going against is our own minds, that our mental lethargy, the fact that we've given up on ourselves, the fact that even though we're alive, we're acting as if we're already dead, the fact that we see ourselves as having no hope in this situation, the fact that we're not utilizing what resources we do have, which is our strength, our energy, our will, our courage, our faith. We're not using any of our own resources because we think it's just a waste of time. But how about we do the opposite? How about we stop letting the situation know that it has us on the ropes, that it has us down? How about we gather up all the energy that we have, because this is literally a life or death situation. If we don't get the hell out of here, we will die. How about we get all our energy that we have left, because there's no reason to save it, and utilize that to possibly get ourselves home? And the happy ending to the story is that army did fight their way out of the trap that they were encircled in, and they eventually, it took them a long time, but they eventually, for the most part, damn near the whole army made it back home to see their families, their wives and kids again. And the whole point of the story was, you need to figure out what it is that you're going against. When you have a situation that has you down, you need to, first of all, identify what is the main thing that has you in the mental state that you're in that you don't want to be in. The mental state, whenever you find yourself in a mental state that you really don't want to be in, ask yourself, once you're able to consciously figure that out, because I know sometimes when we are in emotional states, it's hard for us to consciously say, all right, what am I feeling right now? What is this energy right now? What is it doing to me? It's hard to think rationally when emotions are going on around us. I know that's challenging. I'm human just like you are. But the more you think about this in times of peace, like right now when you're listening to this, the easier it will be for you to think about it in times of consternation when things are going on. So when you catch yourself in these energies, ask yourself this question. What is it? What is the main issue here? What's the shepherd that will make all the sheep scatter? Because in times in life, I'm sure you've been in these spaces. Maybe someone listening to this is in this space now where it seems like you have all these different things coming at you at the same time, right? I got this problem over here, this thing over here, this uncertain situation over here. I got anxiety about this thing over there. And you got all these different things going on. What you need to teach yourself, train yourself to do is a better way of saying it, is identify what is the main issue here. Everyone here has heard the saying, strike the shepherd and the sheep will scatter. Well, that's the thing that you need to learn to do when you find yourself, if you start to feel a little bit of overwhelm from situations going on in your life. What is the main thing that is causing all of these problems? 9 times out of 10, let's go even further. 99 times out of 100, there's one main thing that's causing all the problems. That if you solve that one thing, all the problems will be gone. What is that? That's the shepherd. You strike the shepherd, then you can get rid of all the sheep, right? A wolf is trying to catch some sheep. Don't try to catch one sheep at a time. The only thing you got to do is get rid of the shepherd. When the shepherd goes away, you can kill all the sheep that you want, right? So you need to do the same thing. The shepherd is the main issue that's causing all the problems. Those are the sheep. All right, the sheep will go wherever the shepherd goes. So you get rid of the shepherd, then you get rid of the sheep. What is that main thing for you? Get focused on defeating that main thing, and all the other problems will just fall away so easily. But you got to figure out what that is and never allow that situation. First of all, you got to figure out what it is so you know what's putting you in that state that you don't want to be in. Then you got to focus all your energy on defeating that thing so that all the other issues will go away with it. In episode 13-15, I talked about how to lift people up, how to be the type of individual who brings that type of energy to anyone that you're around. And one of the points there was what? Always have positive energy. Always have a positive outlook. Always have a positive mindset. What did we talk about in yesterday's episode? Having a can-do attitude with whatever you're doing in life. If you are the leader in any group that you're a part of, always keep in mind that the whole team is taking its cues from you. So if you're down, then the game's pretty much over. You're not going to win. They're watching you. So if your energy's down and you're not feeling positive and you don't think there's a way anything can happen and you have a cannot do attitude, then everybody else is going to take after you. It just so happened in that story that I told you with Robert Greene, that philosopher who was traveling with the army, he wasn't the leader, but he was able to rouse the energy of the leader by telling him what he saw. And the leader said, you know what, that's such a great idea, tell everybody, and finally woke the leader back up. But you may not be so lucky to have someone on your team who's a philosopher who's going to come tell you something to pick you back up. So you had to be that person. You have to keep that energy up at all times. When you're down, the whole team is going to become down. And if you're already facing a tough opponent, the game may pretty much be over. And remember that your opponent is watching you as well, whoever your opponent may be. Whether your opponent be a situation, and any of you, again, just think into any times in life when you've been facing a tough situation that's really challenging you and it may really be kicking your ass, the more down you get about the situation, the stronger the situation becomes. And the stronger you feel about defeating the situation, the weaker the situation becomes. That's pretty much how it works, right? The harder you fight against something, the less energy that thing is going to have to fight back against you, because it realizes that you're going to fight back. It's not going to keep bothering. It's going to go find somebody else who will roll over, lay down, and allow the situation to beat them up. But if you don't allow yourself to be that, the situation will go find an easier opponent. All right, tough situations in life, ladies and gentlemen, are bullies. They're like the schoolyard bully. Bullies don't want to get in a fight. All right, bullies aren't looking for fights. They're looking for easy victories. They're looking to bully the people who will allow themselves to be bullied. Someone who's going to fight back, the bully doesn't need to waste time with that person, because why waste my energy fighting back against somebody when I can go take from somebody who's just going to let me have it? So this is the mindset that you need to keep in mind. There's a boxer by the name of Dre Baldwin. And I don't know if he's still boxing, but I remember a few years ago, he was boxing against Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd ended up beating him in the fight. But after the fight, I heard Dre Baldwin giving an interview, and he said something really insightful that I want to point out to you. He said in between rounds, when both fighters were sitting on their stools in their corners in between the rounds, he said he could see, while his interview has seen boxing before, right? You know, in between the rounds, you're sitting down and your trainers are talking to you, your corner guys are talking to you, giving you instructions, giving you some water. If you got a cut or a bruise, they're treating it, whatever they got to do to make sure you can keep fighting so it doesn't open up or bleed all over you. But you can see directly towards the other boxer. I mean, you're sitting directly across from them diagonally. And Dre Baldwin said in between rounds, when his trainers were talking to him and Floyd's trainers were talking to him, he could look across the ring and he saw Floyd Mayweather was watching him the whole time in between rounds. And what Baldwin surmised this to be, he said that he thinks Floyd, his impression of the whole thing was that Floyd was watching his opponent to try to see any signs of weakness. He was looking to see if his opponent started to look tired, or if his opponent started to look defeated, or if his opponent just, for whatever reason, just seemed like in despair, like I can't possibly win. And Floyd would use that. He would pick on that weakness, whatever signs of weakness you were showing, he would probably go after that in the ensuing rounds. And that's the insight that I heard Dre Baldwin give, that Floyd was always watching his opponent, looking for that weakness. And I want you to understand that your opponents are doing the same thing. Whether they're doing it consciously or not, they are doing it. They're watching you, and if they notice a weakness, if they're smart enough, if they're insightful enough, they're going to pounce on that weakness. And any situation in life that you show weakness to is just going to get stronger and stronger simply because you're given the space to do so. Point number 2. Today's topic is how to compete and win mentally over physically. If you are facing an actual human opponent, it could be one person, it could be 100 people, what you need to learn to do is get into their mindset. You need to figure out how they are thinking, your opponent. Same thing that I just told you with that little anecdote about Dre Baldwin, and he noticed how Floyd Mayweather was watching him Floyd was trying to figure out where Baldwin was mentally during the fight. When you know how your opponent is thinking, when you can study your opponent and kind of figure out what's going on in their mind, you can start to suss out their strengths and weaknesses. And from that, you can figure out where they can be attacked mentally. Maybe you'll figure out how you can attack them physically, tangibly, but the main way that you want to attack your opponent is mentally, because you may not always be able to get to them physically. You may not be able to actually do anything, legally, physically to an opponent, unless you happen to be playing a sport. But any other area of life, you may have to do it mentally. And to win mentally takes a whole lot less energy, a whole lot less risk to yourself. And if you can defeat someone mentally, you can render all their tangible tools, their physical resources, useless, because they won't be able to use them if their mind's not in the right space. Understand that every human being has a mental weak spot, no matter who they are, how strong, tough, resourced they appear to be. Every human being has a mental weak spot. In the 48 Laws of Power, there's a chapter, I believe it's chapter 34, Discover Each Man's Thumb Screw. And what Robert Greene describes the thumb screw as is that one thing, at least one thing, for every human being that is their weakness, the area that they're not so strong, even though they may be strong in every other space. That one thing about them that if you can press on that one thing, you can defeat them. But you have to figure out what it is. And human beings, all of us, we all get really good. The older we get, the better we get at covering up whatever that weak spot may be, or whatever those weak spots may be. We compensate by emphasizing our strengths over whatever those weaknesses may be. So you have to become a little bit more insightful as a human being. Same thing Floyd Mayweather was doing, studying his opponent during the fight, trying to see where the weakness was. You need to learn how to do that metaphorically on a grander stage and figure out where is that weakness in my opponent, especially the ones who seem to be unbeatable, especially the ones who seems to be there's nothing that we can do about them, nothing we can do to stop them. On the TV show The Wire, which I talked about in yesterday's episode, one thing that you notice as they went through the show, for those of you who don't know, it was going through the city of Baltimore. They would go into these deep examinations. It wasn't a documentary, this was like a series, acting, where they would just show these different areas of the city. So there's the police force, the education department, down at the shipping docks, what was the other one? Police force, education, shipping docks, the drug dealing, people in the street, and just show how political a lot of these areas could be from the inside out, because the writers were people who had worked in some of these areas. And one of the things that you notice with, let's say, a politician, you may think a politician has all this power and they got this position and they got hired and they're in DC or they're in the city government and they can do whatever they want, or the police department, same thing. They can do this thing and they can do that thing and they have all this power over the common person. But what's the thing that they hate? What is their thumbscrew? What's their area of weakness? The thing that you learn by watching The Wire is that politicians hate a negative headline. That's one thing that they really don't want, is a negative headline against them. Because why? The next time that there's an election, their opponent can use that negative headline against them. They can use one negative headline for a politician to cost them a whole election, cost them 4 years of employment with one negative headline. And the police department, it was the same thing. If the police are looking bad, then the police chief could get replaced. And if he thinks he's about to get replaced, then he's going to place the blame on somebody lower than him, and they're going to place the blame on somebody else. And as they say in The Wire, shit rolls downhill. So whenever the person on top is in trouble, then they give shit to the person that works for them, and those people give shit to the people that work for them, and it just keeps rolling down until it gets to the people at the bottom level, and they're just standing there in a pile of shit. But the point that I'm making here is, every person, every organization, every entity, there is a weakness there to be exploited, but you have to maintain your presence of mind even when you're in a challenging situation, even when you're in the midst of what may be very strong emotions coming at you from all different directions, to figure out where that weakness lies. Because it could put you in a position to win. It could put you in a position to turn things around. I remember saying this in a video in 2008. I made this YouTube video in 2008 where a lot of it was to respond to the challenge that a lot of basketball players have been bringing to me. They were saying, Dre, I do all this work on my game and I'm trying to get better, and I get on the court and I'm doing my thing sometimes, not doing my thing other times, but I'm a smaller player. And in basketball, you get a lot of players who are, quote, undersized, close quote. Under 6 feet pretty much is undersized in basketball. So there were players who would say to me, Dre, well, how do I defeat an opponent who's bigger than me? If I'm 5'9" and I got to guard a guy who's 6'4", what am I supposed to do? This guy could just bat me down and shoot over me all day. Or if I try to shoot against him, he can just block my shot. Or if I try to do a move, I can't even get any space away from him because he's so big. No matter where I go, when I try to shoot the ball, there he is. He's blocking my shot. I can't get a clean shot off. I can't do anything. He's stealing the ball. I can't stop him on defense. This player just dominates me. What am I supposed to do when I'm at such a size disadvantage to my opponent? And what I said in that video was, anything that bleeds or breathes can be defeated. I said a whole lot more in the video, but the main point of the video was what I just told you. Anything that bleeds when it's cut or it breathes to live can be defeated. Never look at an opponent as an unbeatable entity. There is no unbeatable human being. And there's no unbeatable entity that is run. If it's run by human beings, then it can be beat. Now, a machine, maybe. That would be a different angle that I'm not coming from in this episode. But anything that has human beings involved can be defeated. So the idea that I was trying to give to those basketball players, I definitely didn't explain it as deeply as I'm explaining it to you here today, was that the way that you defeat an opponent is not by looking at their tangible resources, such as how tall they are, or how big their muscles are, how much money they have, or how long their resume is. Don't look at their tangible resources and then weigh them against yours and then say, all right, I can either win or I can't, because sometimes you're going to win and sometimes you won't. If that's the way you're looking at things, then you might as well not compete at all. We might as well just line everybody up by their resources and hand out the trophies that way. The way that you need to look at your opponents is not your resources against their resources. It's your mindset against their mindset. And the better you can get into the head of your opponent, and when I say get into their head, I don't necessarily mean make them think something. What I mean is understand how they think. When you can understand how your opponent thinks, how they respond to certain things, what they're going after, what their angles are, what their reasons are for the actions that they take, when you understand that, then you can control a person like a puppet. But you had to, the easiest way, not the easiest way, but the starting point rather, of getting to that is you got to get out of your own narcissism. You got to get out of your own head and thinking about yourself so much and get into the head of your opponent. And this is something that you can learn on a more philosophical level. There are a few books on this that you should read. I would suggest you go to my recommended reading list at dreallday.com/read. The books on strategy, books on mindset, and actually read those books. A lot of them are longer than the average book. They're deeper than the average book, and you're gonna have to spend some time thinking about what you read in order to learn this skill. But if you want to learn the skill, that's the investment that you need to make. So I'm telling you here up front. Never see an opponent as unbeatable. Nobody's unbeatable. Achilles. Anybody know who Achilles is? And I'm not talking about the Achilles on your body at your heel that runs up through your calf muscle. But that's what the Achilles tendon is named after. But Achilles was actually a person, or at least in Greek mythology, or is it confirmed that he was a real person? We'll just say that he was a Greek warrior. He was the hero of the Trojan War, and at his time, he was the greatest of all Greek warriors. And Achilles had been dipped into a river, according to legend. His mother had dipped him into a river when he was a baby, which made him invulnerable for all of his body. There was nowhere that you could hit Achilles that would injure him because he had been dipped in this river, again, according to the legend, so nothing could hurt him. But when his mom dipped him in the river, she held him by his heel. So that was the one area that didn't get blessed with this holy water that made him invulnerable. So the one area of Achilles' person that was vulnerable was his heel. And that's where we had the Achilles heel. So when someone shot him with an arrow in that heel, that one weak spot that Achilles had, that's how Achilles was defeated. So I want you to understand that you don't have to shoot anybody with an arrow or dip yourself in a river, but understand that everybody has an Achilles heel, at least one. Some people have 20 of them, but everybody has at least one. You need to figure out what it is, because it does exist, and that's how you defeat your opponent. Point number 3. Today's topic is how to compete and win mentally over physically in life. In order to do all of these things that we talked about so far here today, not allowing a situation noted that has you on the ropes, that is kicking your butt, getting into the mindset of your opponent, getting out of your own narcissism so you can start to get into the head of whatever or whomever you're going against. The most important thing you must do, this could have been the first point, so you can apply these backwards. Point 3, then 2, then 1. Control your emotions. In the 48 Laws of Power, this is my favorite book. That's why I reference it so many different times. Robert Greene, in the introduction of the book, before he even gets to the first law, the introduction of the book, he says this: the cornerstone of developing power in life and the cornerstone of utilizing your power in life is your ability to control your emotions. Being powerful is not about lashing out and attacking or cussing anybody out or beating a whole bunch of people up. It's about controlling your emotions. When you have impulses that tell you to do those things, actually controlling it. That doesn't mean suppressing it and not doing anything. It means channeling that energy into something that will actually help you in the long run, rather than something that's going to please you in the short term. And if you're reading between the lines, listening between the lines, what are we talking about here? Time perspective, ladies and gentlemen. Powerful people make decisions based on a much longer time perspective than unpowerful people. Unpowerful people do things that will please them right now. Powerful people do things that may not be so pleasing right now, but they will be very pleasing in the long term over the long run, and much more pleasing in the long run than the short-term gain that the not powerful people get from their short-term decision making. This is the key to winning mentally in life and anything that you do. You must keep your emotions under control. Now again, keeping your emotions under control does not mean suppressing your emotions and acting like you don't have any. It means when you have an emotional impulse, having the presence of mind to control that emotional impulse and channel it into positive action that will pay you back over and over again over a long term, instead of something that you're gonna have to pay for in the short term. You can't beat somebody mentally if you are already mentally beat. You can't get into somebody's head if they are already in your head. 33 Strategies of War. This is another book by Robert Greene that I mentioned earlier. He has a chapter on presence of mind. Amidst the turmoil of events, do not lose your presence of mind. That's that sentence right there. That's the title of the chapter. That encompasses exactly what I was telling you in the first point. Do not lose your presence of mind no matter what is going on around you or with other people or in your life. So I suggest, if you have not done so already, as you go purchase that book, The 33 Strategies of War, and read that chapter. And when you're done, read the rest of the book. You must develop to control your emotions. You must develop high levels of equanimity. If you don't know what that word means, I'll give you the definition. It means mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. Let's recap today's topic, which is how to compete and win mentally over physically in life. As Napoleon Bonaparte said, the mental is to the physical as 3 is to 1. And by the way, Napoleon is a guy that Robert Greene mentions over and over again throughout his books, because Napoleon was a guy who very well understood power and very well understood strategizing for war. Point number 1, never let an opponent or a situation know that it has you on the ropes, that it has you depressed, anxious, or that it's kicking your ass. Like John Lucas told his basketball player, never let the workout know that it's kicking your ass. Episode 13-15, we talked about how to lift people up. Always have positive energy no matter what is going on, because if you're the person on top, everybody is watching you. If you're down, then the game is pretty much over. Boxer Andre Berto said, in between rounds when he was fighting Floyd Mayweather, he noticed that Floyd was watching him, trying to probe for any weaknesses that he was showing that he could pounce on in the ensuing rounds. Point number 2, when you're dealing with human being opponents, get into their head, get into their mindset, meaning understand how they think, what they're thinking, why they're thinking what they're thinking, their strengths and weaknesses. When you know how another person thinks and you study them, you can suss out where they're strong, where they're weak, and where they can be attacked mentally, not physically, but mentally. Every human being has a mental weak spot. You need to figure out what this is and never consider anyone to be unbeatable. Everybody is beatable. The same way that Achilles, whose body was invulnerable except for his heel, there is a spot where everyone can be attacked and they will be defeated. Point number 3, you must control your emotions to do any of this. This is the key to winning mentally in life. You must keep your emotions under control. You can't beat an opponent if you are already beaten mentally. You cannot get into somebody's head if they or the situation is already in your head. Presence of mind, you must maintain it amidst the turmoil of events. Read that chapter in the 33 Strategies of War. You must develop high levels of equanimity. I'm going to give you that definition again as we close out. Mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. Work on your game. Dre all day.